never thought I'd see her again. But there she was, standing next to a black Mercedes with its hood up, looking completely out of place against the backdrop of pine trees and mountain fog. I was on my way home from picking up parts in the next town over, Emma's playlist still humming through the truck speakers, when I spotted the expensive car on the shoulder of Route 47. Most people would have kept driving. It was getting dark, and these mountain roads aren't exactly known for their cell service. But that's not who I am. I pulled over, grabbed my toolbox from the bed of the truck, and walked toward her. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and her heels were sinking slightly into the gravel. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and when she turned to look at me, I saw the frustration in her eyes give way to relief. She was beautiful in that untouchable way that comes with money and power, the kind of woman who makes decisions that affect thousands of lives before her first cup of coffee. I felt the weight of my greasy work shirt and the smell of motor oil that probably clung to my skin, but I kept walking. "Car trouble?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though something about her made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't felt in years. She exhaled sharply, a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "That's an understatement. It just died. No warning, nothing. And of course, no signal out here." I nodded, setting my toolbox down on the asphalt. "Mind if I take a look?" "Please," she said, stepping back to give me space. "I'll pay whatever you need. I just need to get back to the city tonight." I leaned over the engine, letting my hands move through the familiar routine of checking hoses, belts, connections. The problem revealed itself quickly: a corroded battery terminal that had finally given up. Simple fix. Maybe 20 minutes if I had the right part in my truck. Which, lucky for her, I did. As I worked, I could feel her watching me. Not in the way people usually watch mechanics, with that mix of suspicion and impatience. This was different. Curious, maybe. Or maybe I was imagining things because the mountain air was getting cold, and I hadn't eaten since lunch, and my mind does stupid things when I'm tired. "You live around here?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence. "About 15 minutes up the road," I said, not looking up from the terminal I was cleaning. "Been here most of my life." "It's beautiful," she said, and there was something in her tone that made me pause. Not the empty compliment of someone trying to fill silence, but something real. "Quiet. That's one word for it," I replied, allowing myself a small smile. "Isolated is another." I felt her eyes on me again, and this time when I glanced up, she was studying my face in a way that made my pulse quicken. Did I have grease on my cheek? Probably. Did I care? I told myself I didn't, but my hand still moved instinctively to wipe at my face. "Have we?" she started, then stopped, shook her head slightly. "Never mind. I'm sorry. That was weird." "What?" I asked, securing the new connection and testing it. "Nothing. You just remind me of someone." My hands froze for half a second. Just half a second. But I felt it echo through my whole body like when you miss a step going downstairs. I forced myself to keep working, to focus on the battery, on the smell of metal and rubber, on anything except the way her voice had softened on that last word. "Someone from around here?" I heard myself ask, hating how my voice came out slightly higher than normal. "No," she said quietly. "Someone from a long time ago. A different life." I wanted to look at her then. Wanted to see if her eyes held any recognition, any flicker of memory. But I didn't. Because if she didn't know who I was, then I was just a mechanic fixing her car on a dark mountain road. And if she did know, if she remembered even a fraction of what I remembered, then this moment was already too dangerous. So I kept my head down and tightened the last connection. "Try it now," I said, stepping back and wiping my hands on a rag that had seen better days. She slid into the driver's seat, those expensive heels clicking against the doorframe, and turned the key. The engine purred to life, smooth and perfect, like it had never died at all. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that lights up boardrooms and closes million-dollar deals. But underneath it, I saw something else. Relief, yes, but also something that looked almost like disappointment. "You're a lifesaver," she said, stepping back out of the car. She reached for her purse, pulling out a wallet that probably cost more than my entire toolbox. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing," I said, the word coming out before I could think about it. She looked up sharply. "What?" "No, I can't just—" "Consider it mountain hospitality," I interrupted, already gathering my tools. "You would have been stuck out here for hours waiting for a tow truck. Nobody should have to deal with that." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out if this was some kind of pride thing or if I was genuinely refusing her money. It was both, if I'm being honest. The pride part because I didn't need her charity, and the genuine part because taking money from her felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite name. "At least take my card," she said finally, pulling a small leather case from her purse, "in case you ever need anything. I work in the city. If you ever need help with anything, a recommendation, a contact, whatever." I took the card because refusing would have been too strange, would have required explanations I wasn't ready to give. The paper felt expensive between my fingers, thick and textured. Claire Donovan, CEO, Donovan Holdings. Below that, a phone number and an email address. I slipped it into my pocket without really looking at it, even though my heart was hammering so hard I was sure she could hear it. "Thank you," she said, and the way she said it made me look at her face one more time. Really look, and for just a second, I saw it. The girl from the library steps, the one who used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder while we pretended to study, the one who kissed me outside the coffee shop on a Tuesday morning and then vanished like smoke. But that girl had been soft where this woman was sharp, had worn thrift store flannels instead of designer suits, had laughed loud and often instead of wearing this careful, controlled expression. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was seeing ghosts in every expensive car that broke down on my stretch of mountain road. "Drive safe," I managed, taking a step back toward my truck. "And get that battery checked properly when you get back to the city. This is just a temporary fix." She nodded, but she didn't move. Just stood there watching me walk away, and I felt the weight of her gaze on my back like a physical thing. I loaded my toolbox into the truck bed, climbed into the driver's seat, and started the engine. In my rearview mirror, I could see her still standing there, one hand on the open door of her Mercedes, the other holding her phone like she'd forgotten why she picked it up. I should have driven away then, should have taken that moment and locked it away with all the other moments I'd learned to stop thinking about. But my hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and my throat felt tight. And before I knew what I was doing, I was pulling out my phone and looking at the card I'd shoved in my pocket. Claire Donovan. The name felt like an echo of something I used to know. But Claire hadn't been her name. Her name had been Clara. Clara Mitchell. The girl with paint under her fingernails and poetry in her backpack. The girl who told me she was going to change the world with art and activism. The girl who promised we'd figure it out, that love was enough, that we'd make it work no matter what. I put the phone down and drove home, my headlights cutting through the darkening mountain road. Emma would be waiting for dinner, probably sprawled across the couch doing homework she should have finished hours ago. And I had bills to pay, and an oil change scheduled for tomorrow morning, and a life that had learned to be full without being whole. But as I pulled into my driveway and saw the warm light from our little house spilling out onto the porch, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd looked at me, like she was trying to solve a puzzle, like she almost knew but couldn't quite place where we'd met before. And I wondered, not for the first time, what would have happened if I'd just told her. If I'd said, "I know exactly who you are. You're the girl who broke my heart 15 years ago and never looked back." 3 days later, she came back. I was under Mrs. Patterson's ancient Buick, cursing at a rusted bolt that refused to budge, when I heard the sound of expensive tires on gravel. I knew it was her before I even slid out from under the car. Call it intuition. Call it the way my body remembered her presence even after all these years. I wiped my hands on my coveralls and stood up, squinting against the afternoon sun. She was leaning against a different car this time. Something sleek and silver that probably cost more than my house. But she wasn't wearing a suit. Instead, she had on dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that looked soft enough to melt in your hands. Her hair was down, falling in waves around her shoulders, and without the armor of her business attire, she looked younger. More like the girl I used to know. "Battery problems again?" I asked, keeping my voice light, even though my heart was doing that stupid racing thing again. She smiled, and it was almost shy. "Actually, no. The car's fine. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by to say thank you properly." "You already said thank you," I pointed out, grabbing a rag to wipe the worst of the grease off my hands. "And I already said it wasn't necessary." "I know," she said, pushing off from the car and taking a few steps closer. "But I wanted to do it anyway. Is there a coffee shop around here? Or a diner? Somewhere I could buy you lunch?" Every instinct in my body screamed at me to say no, to send her back to her silver car and her city life and leave the past buried where it belonged. But there was something in her eyes, something vulnerable and almost desperate, that made the words stick in my throat. "There's a diner about 2 miles down the road," I heard myself say. "Maggie's place. Nothing fancy, but the food's good." "Perfect," she said, and her smile widened just a fraction. "Can you take a break? Or should I come back later?" I glanced at Mrs. Patterson's Buick, then at the clock on the wall of the garage. Emma wouldn't be home from school for another 3 hours, and the Buick could wait. "Give me 5 minutes to clean up," I said. We drove separately, her silver car following my beat-up truck down the winding mountain road. I watched her in my rearview mirror and tried to figure out what game we were playing. Because it was a game, wasn't it? She had to know. Had to remember. Nobody looks at someone the way she'd looked at me and doesn't feel the pull of shared history. Or maybe I was being arrogant. Maybe she really had forgotten. Maybe Clara Mitchell had died when she became Claire Donovan, and I was just a stranger who'd helped her out of a tight spot. Maggie's was nearly empty, just old Tom Henderson nursing his third coffee of the afternoon in the corner booth. We slid into a booth by the window, and I watched her take in the cracked vinyl seats and the faded photographs on the walls with an expression I couldn't quite read. "This is nice," she said, and I almost laughed because nothing about Maggie's was nice. It was comfortable, familiar, home. But nice implied something different, something that didn't quite fit. "It's honest," I said instead, and her eyes snapped to mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Honest," she repeated, like she was tasting the word. "I like that." Maggie herself came over to take our order, eyeing Claire with the kind of curiosity that small-town people reserve for obvious outsiders. I ordered my usual, a burger and fries, and Claire asked for the same. When Maggie left, the silence settled between us like a third person at the table. "So," Claire said finally, folding her hands on the worn formica, "tell me about yourself. You said you've lived here most of your life?" "Born here," I confirmed. "Left for a while, came back about 10 years ago. What made you come back?" I thought about how to answer that. Thought about Ben's funeral, about holding a tiny Emma in my arms and realizing I couldn't raise a baby in a cramped city apartment while working 70-hour weeks. Thought about how these mountains had called me home when everything else fell apart. "Family," I said simply, "and the quiet. City life wasn't for me." She nodded slowly, and something flickered across her face. Regret, maybe, or recognition. "I used to think I wanted quiet," she said softly, When I was younger, I thought I'd end up somewhere like this, doing something meaningful, something real. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Funny how life works out. You don't like what you do? I asked, even though I could see the answer in the tired lines around her eyes. I'm good at it, she said, which wasn't an answer at all. Very good. Built my company from nothing, actually. Started with one small property investment and turned it into an empire. She said the word empire like it tasted bitter. But good at something and happy doing it aren't always the same thing, are they? Before I could respond, Maggie appeared with our food. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, and I found myself relaxing despite everything. There was something easy about sitting across from her, something that felt like muscle memory. Can I ask you something? She said suddenly, setting down her burger. And you can tell me if I'm being weird or invasive or whatever. Okay, I said carefully. That night on the road, when I said you reminded me of someone, you got very quiet, very still. She was watching me now with those sharp CEO eyes, the ones that probably saw through every bluff in every boardroom. Who did you think I meant? My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was it. The moment where I either told the truth or committed to the lie. And the lie would be safer, easier. But looking at her across the table, seeing the vulnerability beneath the polish, I found I couldn't do it. Someone from college, I said slowly. Someone I knew a long time ago. What was their name? Clara, I said, and watched her face go pale. Clara Mitchell. The silence that followed felt like falling, like that moment between losing your balance and hitting the ground when everything slows down and speeds up at the same time. Elena, she whispered, and the way she said my name, soft and broken and full of 15 years of grief, told me everything I needed to know. Hi, Clara, I said, and felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pressed her hand to her mouth. Oh my God, it's really you. I thought. When I saw you on that road, something felt familiar. But I told myself I was being crazy, that it couldn't be. You look so different. Your hair and your... She gestured vaguely at me. You look like you've lived a whole life. I have, I said quietly. We both have. Why didn't you say something? There was hurt in her voice now, accusation. Why did you let me stand there and not know you? Why didn't you recognize me? I shot back, and immediately regretted the harshness in my tone. I'm sorry. That wasn't fair. No, you're right, she said, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. I should have known. But Elena, God, you disappeared. You kissed me that morning outside Java House, and then you were just gone. I went to your dorm. I called. I left messages with your roommate. You vanished. The pain in her voice was real, and it made my chest ache. Because she was right. I had disappeared, had packed up my life in the middle of the night and left without explanation, without goodbye, without anything except a note that said I was sorry. I had to go, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My mom got sick, really sick, stage 4 lung cancer. I got the call that morning, right after I left you. They said she had maybe 6 months, and I ran. Dropped out of school, moved back home, spent every second I had with her. Claire's face crumpled. Elena, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. If I'd known, what would you have done? I asked, not unkindly. We were 21 years old, Clara. Or Claire, I guess. Which do you go by now? Claire, she said. I changed it when I started my company. Thought it sounded more professional, more serious. She laughed bitterly. God, listen to me. I sound like exactly the kind of person I used to hate, You're not, I said automatically, and her eyes met mine with such intensity I had to look away. How do you know? You don't know me anymore. Don't I? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. She reached across the table then, slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, her fingers closed around mine, and the touch sent electricity racing up my arm. Her hands were softer than mine, no calluses from years of working with tools, but they were still her hands. Still the ones that used to trace patterns on my skin in the dark. I never forgot you, she said, her voice shaking. I tried. God, I tried. But Elena, you were my first everything. First love. First kiss. First person who made me feel like I could be exactly who I was without apologizing for it. Do you know how rare that is? I did know, because she'd been that for me too. In a world that hadn't always been kind to girls like us, we'd found each other and created a space where love didn't need to hide, until I'd left and that space had collapsed. What happened to you? I asked. After I left. Where did you go? She pulled her hand back, wrapping both arms around herself like she was cold. I finished school, got my degree in business, not art like I planned. Turns out when the person who believes in your dreams disappears, the dreams feel kind of pointless. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I moved to the city, started working in real estate. I was good at it, really good. Made my first million by 25. Second by 27. Now I have more money than I know what to do with and absolutely no idea why I'm accumulating it. No one special in your life? The question felt dangerous, but I had to know. I tried, she said. There were people, relationships even, but nothing that stuck, nothing that felt. She trailed off, looking out the window at the mountains rising in the distance. Nothing that felt like you. My throat was so tight I could barely breathe. I got married, I said, forcing the words out. His name was Ben. Met him about a year after I moved back here. He was kind, patient. Didn't mind that I was still grieving my mom. Didn't mind that I couldn't quite give him all of me. Did you love him? She asked it quietly, like she was afraid of the answer. In my way, I said honestly. Not the way I loved you, but real enough, safe enough. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. No warning, just gone. I felt the familiar ache that never quite went away. Left me with our daughter, Emma. She's 10 now. Smart as hell and twice as stubborn. You're a mom, Claire said, and there was wonder in her voice. Yeah, I said, and couldn't help smiling. Best thing I ever did, even if I had no idea what I was doing most of the time. I can't even keep a houseplant alive, Claire said, laughing through what looked like tears. Emma's lucky to have you. We sat there for a long time, letting the weight of 15 years settle between us, all the lives we'd lived without each other. All the choices that had brought us to this moment in a small-town diner with the ghost of our younger selves watching from the corners. So what now? I asked finally. You go back to your empire. I stay here with my grease-stained coveralls, and we pretend this didn't happen? Is that what you want? She was looking at me with those eyes again, the ones that saw too much. What I want doesn't matter, I said, even though it was a lie. You have a life, a successful, important life, and I have Emma, and the shop, and responsibilities. We're not 21 anymore, Clara. We can't just run away together and figure it out as we go. Claire, she corrected softly. And I'm not asking you to run away. I'm just asking. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. I'm asking if maybe we could start over. Get to know each other again. See if what we had is still there. or if we're both just chasing ghosts. Every logical part of my brain said this was a terrible idea. That Claire Donovan lived in a different world than Elena Harris. That the gap between us was too wide to bridge. But there was a part of me, the part that still remembered how her lips tasted and how safe I felt in her arms, that wanted to say yes more than anything. I don't know if that's wise, I said carefully. Probably not, she agreed, but when has anything worth having ever been wise? And there it was, the echo of something she'd said to me 15 years ago, when I'd worried about what people would think, about how hard it would be. When has anything worth having ever been wise? And then she'd kissed me, and nothing else had mattered. I can't promise you anything, I said. I have a daughter to think about, a life here that works. I can't just throw that away on a maybe. I'm not asking you to, Claire said. I'm just asking for a chance. Coffee, dinner, conversations. Let me get to know Elena Harris the way I knew Clara Mitchell. Let me see if the woman you've become is someone I could love as much as the girl you were. And what if she is? I asked, my voice breaking on the question. What then, Claire? You can't live here and I can't leave. So what's the end game? I don't know, she admitted, but I spent 15 years wondering what happened to you, wondering if I'd done something wrong, if I could have saved what we had. And now you're here, real and alive and right in front of me, and I can't walk away without at least trying. Can you? I thought about Emma, about the stable life I'd built for us. Thought about my shop and my customers and the community that had held me together when I was falling apart. Thought about how easy it would be to say no, to let Claire drive back to her city and her empire and her empty life. But I also thought about the way my heart had recognized her before my mind caught up, about the 15 years of carrying her memory like a scar, about the fact that some part of me had never stopped loving her, even when I'd promised myself I had. Okay, I whispered. We can try. Her smile was like sunrise, breaking across her face with such joy that I felt my own lips curve in response. Yeah? Yeah, I said. But slow, Claire. We go slow. I need to protect Emma, and I need to protect myself. We're not kids anymore with nothing to lose. Slow, she agreed. I can do slow. Then she grinned. That mischievous smile I remembered from late nights in the library. I built an empire from nothing, Elena. I think I can handle a slow burn. And despite everything, despite all my reservations and fears, I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in longer than I could remember. Over the next few weeks, Claire became a fixture in my life in a way that felt both surreal and inevitable. She'd drive up on weekends, sometimes Friday night if she could get away early, and we'd fall into a rhythm that felt like coming home. Coffee at Maggie's on Saturday mornings, walks through the trails behind my house, long conversations on my porch after Emma went to bed, talking about everything and nothing until the stars came out. She met Emma in the 3rd week, and I'd been terrified about how that would go. Emma was protective of our little family unit, suspicious of anyone who might disrupt the balance we'd created. But Claire won her over by asking about her science fair project, and actually listening to the answer, nodding seriously as Emma explained her experiment on plant growth in different types of soil. She's brilliant, Claire told me later that night, after Emma had gone to bed. We were sitting on my porch, sharing a bottle of wine I'd had in the back of my cabinet for years. She has your eyes, and your determination. She has her father's laugh, I said. This ridiculous snorting thing that makes everyone else laugh too. I wish I could have met him, Claire said quietly. Ben. He sounds like he was a good man. He was, I agreed. He loved Emma more than anything in the world, would have done anything for her. I paused, then added, he knew about you. I told him, early on, that I'd loved someone before, someone who still had a piece of my heart. He said he could work with that, as long as I gave him whatever was left. Did you? Claire asked. I tried, I said honestly. And I think for a while it was enough, for both of us. But there were nights when he'd hold me, and I'd close my eyes and see your face. Days when something would happen, and my first thought would be, I wish I could tell Clara about this. I was a good wife to him, but I don't know if I was ever fully his. I'm sorry, Claire said, and I could hear the guilt in her voice. Don't be, I told her. You didn't do anything wrong. Hearts are complicated. You can love someone and still carry ghosts. He knew that. He married me anyway. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the mountains, crickets and wind through pine trees and the distant call of an owl. Can I tell you something? Claire said eventually. Something I probably shouldn't say because it makes me sound like an obsessive stalker? Now I'm intrigued, I said, smiling despite myself. I looked for you, she admitted. After you disappeared. Not just those first few weeks, but for years. I'd search your name on social media, look through alumni directories, even hired a private investigator at one point. You what? I turned to look at her, shocked. I know, it's creepy. But Elena, you have to understand. One day we were planning our future together, making these grand plans about moving to Portland or Seattle, getting a tiny apartment, figuring out how to be us in the real world. And the next day you were just gone. No explanation, no goodbye, nothing. It drove me crazy thinking I'd done something wrong. That maybe you'd realized you didn't actually want to be with a woman and ran away rather than telling me. I left you a note, I said weakly. A note that said, I'm sorry, I have to go home. Please don't try to find me, Claire said. And I could hear the old hurt underneath her calm tone. Not exactly closure-inducing material. I was 21 and terrified, I said. My mom was dying, and I couldn't process anything beyond that. Looking back, I should have called you, should have explained. But at the time, all I could think about was getting home. Why did you tell me not to try to find you? The question had weight, years of wondering behind it. I took a long sip of wine before answering. Because if you'd come after me, I would have asked you to stay, to drop everything and build a life in this tiny town with a girl whose mother was dying and whose future was completely uncertain. And that wouldn't have been fair to you. You had dreams, Clara. Big dreams. And I couldn't be the reason you gave them up. You should have let me make that choice, she said quietly. I know, I admitted. And I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you, but really, I was protecting myself. Because if you'd come after me and then left anyway, I don't think I would have survived it. Claire reached over and took my hand, lacing our fingers together. Her thumb traced circles on my palm, and the touch made me shiver despite the warm night air. For what it's worth, she said, I would have stayed. If I'd known where you were, what you were going through, I would have stayed. And resented me for it, I said. Eventually, maybe not at first, but years down the line when you realized you'd given up your life for mine. You don't know that. Don't I? I challenged. Claire, look at your life now. Everything you've built. Everything you've accomplished. Would you trade all of that for what-ifs? She was quiet for a long time, and I thought maybe I'd gone too far. Pushed too hard on a wound that hadn't fully healed. But then she said, in a heartbeat. I turned to look at her, searching her face for signs she was exaggerating or being dramatic. But her eyes were serious, unwavering. I have money, she continued. So much money that I could never work again and still have more than I need. I have a company that runs itself with or without me. I have a penthouse apartment with a view of the entire city, and a closet full of clothes that cost more than most people's cars. And I'm lonely, Elena. So lonely that some nights I sit in my fancy apartment and wish I could go back to being broke and 21 and sleeping on a futon with the girl I loved. So yes, I'd trade it all, without hesitation. You're romanticizing the past, I said, but my voice shook. Maybe, she agreed. Or maybe I'm just finally being honest about what I want, what I've always wanted. Before I could respond, before I could talk myself out of it, I leaned in and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid the other might pull away. But then her hand came up to cup my cheek, and my fingers tangled in her hair. And suddenly, we were 21 again. We were kissing outside Java House on a Tuesday morning, the world falling away until it was just us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I rested my forehead against hers. "This is crazy," I whispered. "Absolutely insane," she agreed. "I have a 10-year-old daughter. I know. And you have a billion-dollar company." "Multi-million," she corrected with a small smile. "But close enough." "How is this supposed to work?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But Elena, I've spent 15 years being practical, being smart and careful, and building the life I thought I was supposed to want. Can we just, for once, be reckless? See where this goes without overthinking it?" I wanted to say yes, wanted to throw caution to the wind and dive headfirst into whatever this was. But I was a mother now, and mothers don't get to be reckless. Not when there's a little girl counting on you to be steady and strong and safe. "I need time," I said. "Not to figure out if I want this, because God help me, I do. But to figure out how to do this without hurting Emma. She's been through enough loss. I can't introduce someone into her life unless I'm sure they're staying." "I understand," Claire said, and I could see the disappointment flicker across her face before she smoothed it away. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." But that was the problem, wasn't it? She was going somewhere. Back to her city. Back to her empire. Back to a life that didn't have room for a small-town mechanic and her daughter. And no matter how much we wanted this to work, wanting wasn't enough. The weeks that followed were a study in contradictions. Claire would come up on weekends, and we'd pretend that geography and reality didn't exist. We'd take Emma to the lake, where Claire proved she couldn't skip stones to save her life, but made Emma laugh by trying. We'd cook dinner together in my small kitchen, Claire cursing at my ancient oven while I tried not to laugh at how out of her element she looked. At night, after Emma was asleep, we'd sit on the porch and talk about everything except the future. About books and movies and the stupid things that happened during our weeks apart. About my customers and her business deals and the way the mountains looked different in every season. And sometimes, we'd kiss. Slow, careful kisses that tasted like possibility and fear. Kisses that left me lying awake at night wondering if I was brave enough to reach for what I wanted or if I'd spend the rest of my life playing it safe. Emma, for her part, loved having Claire around. Called her Miss Claire, with the kind of formality that kids use when they're trying to be polite. Would show her homework and science projects and talk her ear off about her friends at school. And Claire, who claimed to know nothing about children, was patient and engaged in a way that made my heart ache. "She's good with her," my friend Maggie commented one Saturday when we were at the diner. Claire and Emma were in a booth playing some card game Claire had brought, Emma's laughter ringing out every time she won. Natural, even. Not many people can connect with kids that easily. "I know," I said, watching them together. "It scares me how good she is with her." "Because you're already thinking about what happens when this ends?" Maggie asked, too perceptive for her own good. "Isn't it going to end?" I asked. "I mean, look at us. We're from completely different worlds. She has board meetings and business deals. I have oil changes and tune-ups. How is that sustainable?" Love doesn't need to be sustainable, Maggie said. It just needs to be real. Everything else is logistics. But logistics mattered when you had a kid. When you'd built a life that worked, and introducing chaos could tear it all down. The breaking point came in week 8. Claire called me on a Thursday night, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice before she even spoke. "Hey," she said, and the single syllable sounded defeated. "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately alert. "I have to go to London," she said. "For work. 3 weeks, maybe a month. There's a deal falling apart and I'm the only one who can salvage it." "Okay," I said slowly. "That's part of your job, right?" "I know, but Elena, I'm tired. I'm so tired of living this life, of flying across the world to save deals I don't even care about, of making money I don't need, of pretending this is what I want." "What do you want?" I asked, even though I thought I knew the answer. "This," she said simply. "You, Emma. Saturday mornings at Maggie's and terrible coffee on your porch. I want to wake up next to you and not have to get on a plane and fly back to a life that feels hollow." My heart was hammering in my chest. "Claire." "I know it's too much," she interrupted. "I know we said we'd take it slow, that we wouldn't make any big decisions. But Elena, I can't keep doing this. Can't keep building a life with you on weekends and then going back to being alone. It's killing me." "What are you saying?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "I'm saying I want to move here," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "I want to sell my apartment, step back from the company, and move to your tiny mountain town. I want to be with you, really be with you, not just stolen weekends and late-night phone calls. I want the whole thing." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "You can't just give up your entire life." "Why not?" she challenged. "You did. You left school, left your dreams, came back here and built something real. Why can't I do the same?" "Because I had to," I said. "My mom was dying. I didn't have a choice." "And I'm dying," Claire said quietly. "Not physically, but in every way that matters. This life is suffocating me, Elena. It has been for years. You just made me finally admit it." "I can't be the reason you throw everything away," I said, even though part of me wanted to scream, "Yes, come here. Be with us. Don't ever leave." "You're not the reason," she said. "You're the excuse. The permission I needed to finally do what I've wanted to do for years. Please, Elena, let me try. Let me see if I can build a life there. If it doesn't work, if I hate it, I can always go back. But if I don't try, I know I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I thought about Emma, about how she lit up when Claire was around. Thought about how empty my house felt on the weeks when Claire couldn't make it up. Thought about the way my heart recognized her, the way my body remembered how to fit against hers. "What about Emma?" I asked. "She's gotten attached to you. If you move here and it doesn't work out, if you decide this life isn't what you wanted after all, that will break her heart." "Then I'll make sure it works," Claire said fiercely. "I won't let her down, Elena. Or you. I promise." "You can't promise that," I said. "Life doesn't work that way." "No, but love does," she said. "And I love you. I've loved you since we were 21 and stupid and thought we could take on the world. I've loved you through 15 years of not knowing if you were alive or dead. And I love you now, knowing exactly who you are and what you've been through. That's not going to change because I moved to a different zip code." "This is insane," I whispered. "Probably," she agreed. "But when has anything worth having ever been wise?" And there it was again, that echo of who we used to be, who we might still become. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Okay, but slow. You don't sell your apartment right away. You get a rental here, try it out for a few months. See if you can actually stand living in a town where the biggest excitement is Mrs. Patterson's Buick breaking down." "I can work with that," Claire said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "When I get back from London, I'll start looking at places. Maybe something close to you. Not too close. I don't want to crowd you, but close enough that I could come over for dinner." "Close enough for dinner," I repeated, feeling a smile tug at my lips despite my fears. "I think we can manage that." We talked for another hour, making plans that felt both terrifying and inevitable. And when I finally hung up and went to check on Emma, I found her awake, sitting up in bed with her tablet. "Mom," she said when I peeked in, "is Miss Claire okay?" "She's fine, baby," I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Why?" "I heard you talking. You sounded worried." I brushed her hair back from her face, this little person who'd become my entire world. "Miss Claire might be moving to town," I said carefully. "How would you feel about that?" Emma's face lit up. "Really? She'd live here, near us?" "Maybe," I said. "But if she does move here, it's because she and we're trying to see if we can be more than friends. Do you understand what that means?" "Like you'd be girlfriends?" Emma asked, with the matter-of-fact tone only a 10-year-old could manage. "Yeah," I said, "like that. How do you feel about that?" Emma was quiet for a moment, chewing on her bottom lip the way she did when she was thinking hard. "Does that mean she'd be around more? Like, a lot more?" "If things work out, yes." "Good," Emma said. "I like her. She's funny, and she helps me with my math homework without making me feel stupid. And she makes you happy. You smile more when she's here." "You're okay with this?" I asked, needing to be absolutely sure. "Mom," Emma said with exaggerated patience, "you've been sad for a really long time. Since Dad died, maybe even before. And I know you try to hide it, but I see it. But when Miss Claire is here, you're not sad. You're you again. The you I remember from when I was little. So yeah, I'm okay with it. More than okay." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart," Emma said, grinning. "You just don't notice because I'm short." I laughed and pulled her into a hug, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "I love you, kid." "Love you too, Mom," she said, hugging me back. "Now go call Miss Claire back and tell her to hurry up and move here already. I want to show her my science fair project before it's due." The next few weeks passed in a blur. Claire went to London, and we talked every day. Video calls where she'd show me her hotel room, and I'd show her my garage. Emma would pop into frame to tell Claire about school or ask for help with homework. And sometimes I'd just watch them interact and think, maybe, just maybe, this could work. Claire came back 3 weeks later, the deal saved, and her bank account even more obscene than before. But instead of going back to her penthouse, she drove straight to my place, arriving at sunset with a bottle of champagne and a smile that made my knees weak. "I found a place," she announced, barely waiting for me to open the door. "It's perfect. Small, just a 2-bedroom cottage about a mile from here. Has a little garden and a view of the mountains. The landlord says I can move in next week." "Next week?" I repeated, feeling panic and excitement war in my chest. "Too fast?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. I thought about what Emma had said, about how I'd been sad for so long I'd forgotten what happy felt like. Thought about how every day Claire was gone felt like holding my breath. "No," I said. "Not too fast, just unexpected." "I'm done with unexpected," Claire said, stepping closer. "I want planned, intentional. I want to wake up every morning and choose this. Choose you. Choose the life we're building together. No more half measures." Emma appeared in the hallway then, wearing her pajamas even though it was barely 7. "Miss Claire," she shouted, running over for a hug. "Hey, kiddo," Claire said, scooping her up even though Emma was getting too big for it. "Guess what? I'm moving here." "I know," Emma said. "Mom told me. Can I help you decorate? I'm really good at picking out curtains." "You are?" Claire asked, laughing. "No," Emma admitted, "but I want to try." "Deal," Claire said, setting her back down. "We can go shopping next weekend. You, me, and your mom. Make a day of it." I watched them planning, Emma chattering excitedly about paint colors and furniture arrangements, and felt something settle in my chest. Something that felt like peace, like coming home after a long journey. That night, after Emma was finally asleep, Claire and I sat on the porch with that bottle of champagne. The stars were out, millions of them, the kind of sky you can only see far from city lights. "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "Really sure? Because once you move here, once Emma gets even more attached, there's no going back without casualties." "I'm sure," Claire said, taking my hand. "Elena, I've spent 15 years running from this. From you, from what we had, from the possibility of what we could be. And I'm done running. Maybe it won't work. Maybe we'll discover that who we are now is too different from who we were then. But I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering." "I'm scared," I admitted. Terrified, actually. Because this isn't just my heart on the line anymore. It's Emma's too. "I know," she said. "And I promise you, I will do everything in my power to make sure neither of you regrets giving me this chance. I'm not 21 anymore, Elena. I'm not going to run away when things get hard. This is it for me. You're it for me." I leaned in and kissed her, soft and slow, tasting champagne and promise. When I pulled back, I said, "You're it for me too. You always have been." The move happened faster than I expected. One week Claire was flying back and forth between the city and the mountains, and the next she was hauling boxes into her new cottage with Emma's enthusiastic help. I watched from the porch, sipping coffee and trying not to think about how surreal this all was. "Mom, come help," Emma called. "Miss Claire brought like 1,000,000 books and we need to organize them." I set down my coffee and walked over, finding Claire buried in boxes, her hair escaping from its ponytail, looking more real than I'd ever seen her in her expensive suits. "1,000,000 is an exaggeration," Claire said, grinning at me. "Maybe 500,000. The cottage was small but perfect, with hardwood floors and big windows that let in the mountain light. Emma was already making herself at home, directing where things should go with the confidence of an interior designer. "Books by the fireplace," Emma declared. "And we need plants, lots of plants." "I kill plants," Claire reminded her. "Then we'll get fake ones," Emma said with a shrug. "Come on, Miss Claire. Even you can't kill fake plants." I helped them unpack, sorting through Claire's things and finding traces of the girl I used to know. Poetry books I remembered from college. A framed photo of us from sophomore year, both grinning at the camera, young and hopeful and in love. She caught me looking at it. "I've kept that picture in every place I've ever lived," she said quietly. Could never quite bring myself to throw it away. "I have one too," I admitted, in a box in my closet. Couldn't look at it, but couldn't let it go either. "We were so young," she said, studying the photo. "We were happy," I corrected. "We can be happy again," she said, and it sounded like a promise. Over the next few months, Claire settled into mountain life with a determination that was both admirable and amusing. She bought appropriate clothing, trading her heels for hiking boots and her designer bags for a practical backpack. She learned to drive on mountain roads without white-knuckling the steering wheel. She even started helping out at the shop sometimes, mainly doing paperwork since her mechanical skills were non-existent. But the company was nice. Emma adored having her around. Claire would pick her up from school sometimes, help with homework, come to parent-teacher conferences. And slowly, So slowly I barely noticed it happening. We became something that looked like a family. But it wasn't perfect. There were hard days when Claire clearly missed her old life, when she'd get a call from her company, and I'd see the conflict in her eyes. Days when I worried that I was holding her back, that eventually she'd realize what she'd given up and resent me for it. "Talk to me," she said one night when she'd caught me brooding on the porch. "What's going on in that head of yours? Do you ever regret it?" I asked, "giving up everything to move here?" She thought about it for a moment, and I appreciated that she didn't just immediately say no. "Sometimes I miss the efficiency," she admitted. "The way things just happened in the city. How you could get anything delivered at any time. How there were options for everything. And yeah, sometimes I miss the work, the feeling of closing a big deal or solving a complex problem." My heart sank. "Claire." "But," she interrupted, taking my hand, "I don't miss the loneliness. The feeling that I was just going through the motions of a life without actually living it. The way I'd come home to that giant empty apartment and realize I had no one to share my victories with. No one who really knew me. So no, Elena, I don't regret this. Not for a second." "Even when Mrs. Patterson's Buick breaks down for the 3rd time in a month?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Especially then," she said, smiling. "Because it means I get to watch you work, covered in grease and completely in your element. Do you know how sexy that is?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Stop. I'm serious," she said, moving closer. "You have no idea what you look like when you're fixing something. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. How your hands know exactly what to do. It's like watching an artist paint." "I'm a mechanic," I said. "Not an artist." "You're both," she said. "And you're mine. If that's still okay with you." I kissed her instead of answering, pouring 15 years of wanting and months of building into that kiss. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I said, "More than okay." Things shifted after that, became easier, more natural. Claire stopped looking over her shoulder at the life she'd left behind and started looking forward at the life we were building. She joined the town council, started volunteering at Emma's school, even learned how to change a tire under my patient instruction. And on a Tuesday morning in October, exactly 1 year after her car broke down on that mountain road, I woke up to find her in my kitchen making breakfast. Emma was at a sleepover, and it was just us, sunlight streaming through the windows and coffee brewing and something that felt like perfection. "Morning," she said, smiling at me over her shoulder. "I'm making pancakes. Well, attempting pancakes. They might be disasters." "I love disasters," I said, wrapping my arms around her waist from behind. She turned in my arms, still holding the spatula, and kissed me softly. "I love you," she said. "I know we've said it before, but I need you to know. This life, this messy, complicated, beautiful life we're building, it's everything I didn't know I needed." "I love you too," I said, "even when you burn the pancakes." "Hey," she protested, then looked at the stove. "Oh, yeah, those are definitely burned." We laughed and scraped the charred mess into the trash, ordering takeout instead. And as we sat at my small kitchen table, eating mediocre diner food and talking about nothing and everything, I thought about how far we'd come. From 2 scared college girls to women who'd lived entire lives apart. From strangers on a mountain road to this moment, here, together. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked. "That sometimes the long way around is the right way," I said. "That maybe we needed those 15 years apart to become people who could actually make this work." "Deep thoughts before coffee?" she teased. "It's the burned pancakes," I said. "They've made me philosophical." "Well, in that case," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand, "I should burn them more often." And maybe it was the sunlight, or the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, or just the accumulated weight of all our years of longing finally finding their resolution. But I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this was it. This was my forever. Not perfect, not easy, but real and honest, and worth every moment of waiting. Later that day, Emma came home from her sleepover full of stories and energy. Claire stayed for dinner, and then somehow never left. That night turned into the next day, which turned into the next week, and before we knew it, she'd essentially moved in without us officially deciding anything. "So," I said one evening as we were cleaning up dinner, Emma doing homework at the table, "are we just going to pretend you still live at the cottage?" Claire paused, dish towel in hand, and looked around my kitchen. At Emma's backpack hanging by the door, at the photos on the fridge, at the life we'd built in the margins of what we'd planned. "Is this okay?" she asked. "I don't want to push. If you need more space—" "Claire," I interrupted, "the cottage lease is up next month. Maybe you should just not renew it." Her face lit up with hope and uncertainty. "Are you asking me to move in? Officially?" "I think you already have," I said. "We're just making it official." Emma looked up from her homework. "Does this mean Miss Claire will be here for breakfast every day? Because that would be great. Mom's pancakes are terrible." "Hey," I protested while Claire laughed. "Don't worry, kiddo," Claire said. "We'll work on my pancake skills together." And that's how Claire Donovan, billionaire CEO, moved into a small house on a mountain with a mechanic and a 10-year-old girl. It wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't the empire she'd built. But watching her help Emma with homework while I finished up the dishes, hearing their laughter echo through my small home, I knew it was the life she'd chosen. And sometimes, choosing is everything. Sometimes I wonder if all of this was destiny, or simply a second chance we almost let slip away. There are days when I look at Claire and still see that college girl, the one who stayed up with me until dawn, talking about changing the world. And there are days when I see her as she is now, a woman who changed her entire world for love. It wasn't easy. There were difficult moments, complicated conversations, days when we both doubted whether we were doing the right thing. But here we are, building something real, something worth every moment of uncertainty. Emma now calls her Claire, without the miss. And sometimes, when they don't think I'm listening, I hear Emma call her Mama Claire, with that naturalness with which children accept love when they see it. My heart expands every time I hear it, because it means this is real, that we're a family in the most unexpected and perfect way. So if you ask me how this story ended, I'd tell you it didn't end. It's only just beginning. Because finding each other after 15 years isn't the end. It's the prologue to something completely new. And every day that Claire wakes up in my bed, every morning that Emma runs downstairs for breakfast with both of us, every stolen moment in the garage when Claire stops by just to say hi, is another page in our story. You know, there's something profoundly beautiful about loving someone twice in one lifetime. The first time is fire and urgency, everything consuming fast and bright. The second time is like sunrise over the mountains, slow and steady, illuminating every corner with a soft light that promises to stay. And this second chance with Claire is that light that stays, love that builds, a home we created with our own hands. I can't tell you it will be perfect. There will be hard days, moments when our worlds collide, instants when the past tries to reclaim what we lost. But I can tell you this. When you find someone who makes you feel at home, someone who chooses to stay when it would be easier to leave, someone who sees your complicated life and decides they want to be part of it anyway, don't let them go. Fight for that. Build on that. Because that kind of love, the kind that survives 15 years of separation and finds its way back, that love is worth everything. And if you ever doubt, If fear whispers to you that it's too complicated or too late, remember this: it's never too late to choose love. It's never too complicated to fight for what makes you feel alive. And it's never foolish to believe in second chances. Because here I am, Elena Harris, small-town mechanic, single mother, a heart I thought was closed forever. And here is Claire Donovan, former CEO, new mountain resident, the love I thought I'd lost. And together we're proving that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe gives you exactly what you need right when you stop looking for it. So thank you for listening to our story, for staying with us through every mile of this emotional journey. And if this story touched something in your heart, if it made you remember a love you thought was lost, or gave you hope for one you haven't found yet, then every word was worth it. Because in the end, that's what we are. Stories looking for hearts that understand them. And I hope ours found yours. May you find your own echo in the mountains. May you have the courage to stop when someone needs help, even if that person turns out to be your destiny. And may you never, ever let fear convince you that it's too late for love. Because believe me when I tell you, it never is. If this story touched your heart, if you felt something real in these words, please let me know. Hit like if you believe in second chances. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories of love that defy the odds. Because every person who joins this community is one more voice saying that love between women matters, that our stories deserve to be told, that we exist and love and build beautiful families. And more than anything, thank you. For your time, for your heart, for believing that a story like this deserves to be heard. See you in the next story, with more love, more hope, and more proof that happy endings are always possible when you have the courage to fight for them. With all my love from these mountains that now feel like home, I wish you find your own version of happiness, the one that's authentic for you, the one that makes your heart feel at peace. Until soon, my dears. And remember, love always, always finds its way home.